Noah was out in the field, the gentle wind nudging his worn-out hat, when he heard the unmistakable sound of the Johnsons' old truck pulling up at the entrance to the farm. He looked up, his heart skipping a beat when he saw Lucas step out, looking older, more confident, but still the same boy he'd known. It was as if time had stood still, and all the whispered promises of those summer nights came rushing back in an instant. "Long time, huh?" Lucas said with an uncertain smile, his hands shoved into his pockets as if he was searching for something he couldn't quite find. Noah felt the weight of all the years that had passed, and wondered if Lucas remembered those nights under the stars, when they'd promised each other the world. He took a deep breath, trying to hide the excitement and nerves in his voice. "Yeah, long time," Noah replied, his voice rough as he tried to seem casual while his eyes scanned Lucas's face. He wanted to say so much, but the words felt stuck, as if nothing could capture what he was feeling. Even so, he knew Lucas understood, just as he always had when they used to share secrets without needing words. They walked toward the barn together, exchanging only a few words, each lost in thought. Noah couldn't help but notice the way Lucas looked around, like he was rediscovering life on the farm. It was clear he had changed, but still, in their glances, there was something untouched by time or distance. Lucas let out a short laugh, trying to break the tension. "Did you really think I wouldn't come back?" he asked, as if the idea of them being apart was absurd. Noah looked away, trying to hide the smile tugging at his lips. They'd promised each other years ago, and he knew Lucas would keep his word, but it was hard to believe they were finally face to face. In that moment, under the open prairie sky, Noah realized that despite all the years and distance, what he felt for Lucas was still there. It was something words couldn't capture, a feeling only they could understand. And as the sun started to set on the horizon, they stood in silence, feeling the weight of everything they'd left behind and of what was still to come. The week passed with an unexpected lightness for Noah, each day bringing back memories he thought he'd buried. Seeing Lucas again felt like opening an old trunk filled with memories and whispered promises. He remembered clearly the first time he felt something different for his childhood friend, but he never thought those emotions would still be alive years later. Lucas found him one night near the barn, the moonlight casting a glow on his face, leaving Noah speechless. "Do you remember those summer nights?" Lucas asked in a low voice, like it was a secret. Noah nodded, a nostalgic smile on his lips. "How could I forget?" he replied, knowing nothing more needed to be said. In that instant, it was like the years had never passed. They started meeting regularly, always with the excuse of helping around the farm or catching up. But they both knew there was much more going on, something that went beyond words. As they walked the trails of the property, they recalled childhood adventures and exchanged glances that spoke volumes. It was a dangerous game, but neither seemed willing to give it up. Lucas, in one of those meetings, stopped suddenly, looking at Noah with an intense gaze. "Do you ever think about what we promised each other?" he asked, without breaking eye contact. Noah swallowed hard, remembering that night when, at 16, they'd promised they'd be together someday, no matter what. "Every day," Noah replied, finally admitting what he'd held back for so long. They both knew that keeping this relationship a secret would be complicated, but the words spoken that night felt like an unbreakable bond. They hugged in silence as if they were protecting what they had from the outside world. In that moment, all that mattered was the warmth of the embrace and the certainty that they still had a chance to be happy together. As they walked back, each lost in their thoughts, Noah couldn't shake the mix of fear and hope he felt. They were stepping into uncharted territory, but with Lucas by his side, he knew he was willing to risk everything. After all, their love was the only certainty he had in life. Days went by, and Noah found himself increasingly eager for the next time he'd see Lucas. It was as if every minute with him reignited a spark he thought he'd lost. Lucas, despite having spent the last few years studying medicine, seemed as connected to the farm as ever. Noah's heart would race every time he saw Lucas pick up a tool or help with the cattle, as if this was where he'd belonged all along. One afternoon, as they finished feeding the cattle, Lucas stepped closer, watching Noah silently. "I missed this," he said in almost a whisper. Noah smiled, looking out over the horizon. "It's simple out here," he replied, trying to mask how much the moment meant. Lucas took a step closer, his eyes sparkling like there was something he wanted to say, but couldn't find the words for. They started seeing each other more often, always careful not to raise suspicion. Lucas volunteered to help around the farm whenever he could, and the two would end up spending hours together, exchanging looks and discreet smiles. It was a silent secret, but it grew each day, and though Noah knew the risks, he couldn't stay away. One quiet evening, Lucas suggested they go to the river where they'd swum as kids. Sitting by the water, their feet dipped in the cold current, Lucas broke the silence. "Do you think we could really make this work?" he asked, his voice filled with doubt. Noah felt a pang in his chest. He knew the road would be hard, but in that moment, all that mattered was how he felt for Lucas. "We'll figure it out," he replied, trying to project a confidence he wasn't sure he had. The night passed with them side by side, exchanging confessions and dreams as they had in childhood. Lucas spoke of his desire to be a rural doctor, coming back to the countryside to help the community they'd grown up in. Noah realized that despite the time apart, their plans and dreams seemed to intertwine. They laughed, they talked, and for a moment, everything seemed possible. Before leaving, Lucas took Noah's hand, holding it tightly. "No matter what happens, I'm here," he said, and Noah felt a calm settle over him. It was a quiet promise, but it meant everything to Noah. They knew the future was uncertain, but they were willing to face whatever came, together. To avoid curious eyes and keep their secret, Noah and Lucas started meeting at nightfall. It was under the starry sky that they could truly be themselves, away from any judgment. The dim light of the moon lit up their faces as they explored the fields and trails around the farm, each midnight adventure feeling more daring and exciting than the last. One night, while they walked by the riverbank, Noah stopped suddenly, pointing up. "Look at that," he said, marveling at the intensely bright stars. Lucas looked at him, not the sky, and smiled. "Beautiful," he replied, without taking his eyes off Noah. Those shared moments of closeness were precious, and Noah felt his heart warm with every exchanged glance. On another night, they almost got caught. As they walked back toward Noah's farm, they heard footsteps approaching. It was Noah's father, returning from a walk. Without time to think, the two hid behind a stack of hay, holding their breaths as his father passed by. They were so close that Noah could feel Lucas's heartbeat racing against his chest. When the danger finally passed, They looked at each other and burst into laughter, relieved and anxious all at once. These hidden encounters not only strengthened their bond, but also heightened their desire to be together, even knowing the risks. The thrill of their midnight meetings seemed to fuel the passion growing between them, like a fire hard to put out. Every night together was a reminder of what they could have if the world would just accept who they were. Lucas confessed on one of these nights that he had never felt so alive. "It's like every star is brighter when I'm with you," he said. And Noah knew those words were true. Being with Lucas was like rekindling all the hopes he'd had in his youth, now intensified by the love they had built. As dawn approached, Noah knew they'd have to return to their daily lives, pretending that nothing had changed. But he also knew that no matter how long they'd have to keep the secret, the love he felt for Lucas was worth any sacrifice. And so, under the first light of day, they said goodbye, with the promise to see each other again the following night. As days passed, the weight of their situation began to settle on Noah and Lucas. While their time together was intense and full of meaning, they both knew they were living a double life, far from what their families expected for them. Lucas, with his career in medicine drawing closer, started questioning how he would balance his professional life and his love for Noah. Noticing Lucas's distant gaze, Noah decided to confront him. "Are you having second thoughts?" he asked, trying to hide the insecurity in his voice. Lucas shook his head, but his eyes held something unsaid. "No, it's just, I want us to work, but I'm afraid of what I might have to sacrifice." Lucas's honesty only deepened Noah's feelings. He knew that being by his side would mean facing challenges Lucas might never have imagined. Over time, the pressure began to affect Noah as well. He wondered if the countryside was really the right place for Lucas, or if his love was keeping Lucas from his dreams. Although he loved life on the farm, Noah feared his world might one day be a burden for Lucas. He wrestled with the fear of being the reason Lucas might not realize his full potential. During one of their nighttime meetings, Lucas expressed his concerns. "I don't want you to feel like you're holding me back," he said, his voice full of sincerity. Noah replied, with a confidence he didn't completely feel, "I want you to follow your dreams, whatever it takes." The conversation was difficult, but it brought out the love and admiration they had for each other. That night, they decided that mutual support would be essential to face the challenges ahead. Later that night, as they lay under the stars in silence, Lucas held Noah's hand. "No matter where life takes us, I'll always find my way back to you," he promised. And Noah felt his heart finally calm. The doubt still existed, but with that promise, they both felt ready to face whatever might come. They knew they'd eventually have to make a decision. But for now, they were willing to keep the secret and savor every moment together, hopeful that somehow everything would work out. And so, with their hearts a little lighter, they said goodbye that night, ready to face another day, knowing they had something precious no one could take away. As days went by, Noah and Lucas found that each meeting renewed the promises they had made as teenagers. On a sunny weekend, they decided to escape to a secluded part of the property, bringing only a picnic basket and the desire to be together without any worries. Under the shade of a large tree, they settled down, savoring the moment of peace. While they ate and talked about the future, Lucas confessed his desire to work as a rural doctor. serving small communities like theirs. "I want to make a difference where it matters most," he said, looking into Noah's eyes. Noah felt a wave of hope. The idea of Lucas working near him was something he'd never dared to imagine. But in that moment, it seemed like a real, attainable possibility. Noah smiled, holding Lucas's hand. "Then let's make it happen," he replied, his eyes shining with determination. For the first time, they began making concrete plans, thinking about how they could unite their lives without having to hide who they were. They knew the road wouldn't be easy, but each promise and each shared dream that afternoon brought them closer. As the sun began to set, Lucas pulled Noah closer, their faces just inches apart. "No matter what, I'm in this with you," he whispered, and Noah felt a flood of emotions wash over him. He knew those words meant everything. It was a promise that, regardless of the challenges, they would fight to build a future together. Heading home, Noah couldn't contain his smile. They had renewed the promises made years ago, but now with the resolve of two adults who understood the stakes. Every challenge felt smaller with Lucas by his side, and he felt they were finally on the right path. That night, as each was in his own home, Noah looked out the window toward Lucas's house, certain he was thinking of him too. There was a silent understanding between them, a promise that went beyond words. And as uncertain as the future was, Noah knew they'd face it all together. One stormy afternoon took Noah and Lucas by surprise as they worked on the farm. Dark clouds covered the sky, and strong winds began to shake the barn. Within minutes, heavy rain poured down, turning the ground to mud and making it hard to see. Noah struggled to protect the cattle, while Lucas ran to help him, not caring about getting soaked to the bone. In the chaos, they exchanged brief glances, each trying to hide their worry for the other. Lucas pulled Noah into an improvised shelter, and they watched helplessly as the storm wreaked havoc on the farm. "I can't believe this is happening now," Noah muttered, watching part of the fence destroyed by the wind. Lucas placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We'll get through this, just like we always do," he said, with a firmness that soothed Noah. When the storm finally passed, they went out to assess the damage. Parts of the farm structure were ruined, and the recovery work would be tough. Having Lucas by his side was essential, and Noah felt an unexpected relief to have him there. They spent the day working together, rebuilding fences and protecting the animals, both exhausted but determined to restore everything. While they fixed a section of the fence, Noah's mother appeared, watching them from afar with a curious expression. Noah felt a chill, fearing she might suspect something. Lucas stayed calm, continuing the work as if nothing was happening, but they both knew her look held silent questions. Later, when they were finally alone, Lucas expressed his concern. "Do you think she suspects anything?" he asked, worried. Noah shrugged, trying to brush off the idea. "Maybe, but we'll handle it," he replied, forcing a smile. The external storm seemed to have passed, but they knew they might face another one, this time within their own homes. Despite the challenges, the experience of facing the storm together only strengthened their bond. They knew there were risks and challenges ahead, but they also knew they'd be ready to face them side by side. That day had become proof that regardless of the obstacles, their love was stronger than any storm. It didn't take long for Noah's family's curious looks to turn into direct questions. One evening, as he and Lucas were discreetly saying goodbye, Noah's father appeared at the farmhouse door with a serious and probing look. "Noah, can we talk?" he said, not hiding the tension. Lucas sensed the heavy atmosphere and motioned to leave, but Noah held his arm, feeling it was time to face what they'd been avoiding. Noah followed his father inside, the silence between them heavier than ever. "Is there something going on between you two?" his father asked, his voice loaded with suspicion. Noah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. For a second, he considered denying it, but he knew he couldn't keep hiding who he was. "Yes, there is," he admitted, his voice steady, but his heart racing. It was the first time he'd openly admitted his love for Lucas. The response left Noah's father silent, his expression shifting between shock and disappointment. "This is unexpected," he finally said without looking at his son. Noah felt a mix of sadness and relief. He'd always known it would be hard for his family to accept, but at the same time, he couldn't continue living a lie. He held on to the hope that, in time, his parents might come to understand. The next morning, Lucas came to the farm, aware of what had happened. "Are you okay?" he asked, holding Noah's hands with concern. Noah smiled, even though his eyes were teary. "I'm okay, because now I'm finally free," he replied, knowing that this step was just the beginning of a long journey. Lucas hugged him, both finding comfort and strength in each other. Noah's family didn't take the news easily. While they didn't cut him off entirely, the tension between them was palpable. Noah knew it would take time for things to improve, but he was determined to stand by Lucas. For the first time, he felt he could truly be himself without fear, and that strengthened him daily. Together, Noah and Lucas decided to face the future with the same courage they'd used to face every storm and challenge. They knew their love was worth any sacrifice, and they were ready to move forward, hoping that one day their families might accept them for who they were. Over time, Noah and Lucas found a new way to live together, even if their families still viewed them with suspicion. The small rural community they'd grown up in started whispering about their relationship, but they chose not to let it affect them. For them, the love and freedom they'd finally claimed were worth any outside judgment. One afternoon, Lucas arrived at the farm with a smile, bringing news that would change their lives. "I've decided to open my practice here," he said, happiness clear in his voice. Noah's heart leapt. Lucas's dream of becoming a rural doctor was finally coming true. And, more than that, it meant they could build a life together without the constant threat of parting ways. It was the realization of a dream they'd both nurtured since youth. The two began renovating a small house next to the farm where Lucas could set up his clinic. The community initially resisted, but as they saw Lucas's dedication and hard work, they began to accept him as a doctor. Lucas brought a new energy to the area, and Noah felt immense pride seeing him respected and admired, proving that his choice to stay was the right one. One special evening, under the starry sky that had always witnessed their promises, Lucas had a surprise for Noah. "I know we've been through a lot, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else," he said, pulling a small ring from his pocket. Noah was speechless, his eyes shining. "Will you continue to stand by me through everything?" Lucas asked, and Noah replied with a smile, no words needed. It was the fulfillment of a commitment they'd secretly made years ago. With time, their families finally began to accept their relationship. Although there wasn't full acceptance, the respect and love between Noah and Lucas became undeniable. Slowly, broken ties began to mend, and their family saw that their love was as pure and true as any other. Now, with the clinic running and farm life thriving, Noah and Lucas felt that the promises made in their youth had become reality. They had built a solid life, and despite facing challenges and prejudice, they were ready for whatever the future held. Under the open prairie sky that had always bound them, they sealed their commitment to each other, knowing that every hardship had only strengthened the love they shared.